to polygamy, but Jacob was deceived into polygamy. And by that point, it was like, oh, all right, here we go. You know, I got two, I might as well go for four. I guess that was his rationale. Okay, yes. So you're seeing a thread through the text here of the deception, right? You're seeing this deception. If you look a little deeper into that idea of deception, it plays out here, and behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no guile, right? You know, there's no deception here, right? So you can see that Yeshua is using the known common history of the Torah, which is that there was a bit of deception that had been there for a long time, and he's calling this out in kind of a tongue-in-cheek manner, right? A real Israelite, right? You know, never one to deceive his brethren, huh? Okay, good. So the idea there is that he's kind of making aware that we come from a people that are deceptive, but the way of truth is not what it means to be a genuine Israelite. Or the way of deception is not what it means to be a genuine Israelite, is what I meant to say. Good. What did you see, Jim?
Who ultimately paid the price for the deception, though?
Okay.
Ultimately, not only lost most of his kids, his grandkids, he also lost most of his wealth with the way the downstream livestock was handled. Yes. Which was exactly the way he agreed to.
Right.
But he shot himself in the foot being greedy.
Yeah. So busy trying to get more that in his deceptions, those deceptions came full cycle to come back against him.
Knocked him right in the short feathers.
And he lost, like you said, he lost his wealth, even lost his gods, which we could talk about. How many of you guys picked up all three of the major sins that Laban was guilty of? So the first one's most obvious, right? Deception, right? He's walking in deception. Okay, so now greed is interesting because I wasn't going to focus on that one, but you're right. That's a fourth one that comes out of the text, isn't it? What else? Divination. Good. So there's this divination that's happening. He says, I divine that God has blessed me because of you. And that word divine there is actually a good translation of that. It comes from a Hebrew root word. It's nachash, which means it's related to the Hebrew root word for snake. And it means to hisp or to whisper. And so the idea is that he is somehow consulting with omens, consulting with false gods. He's divining. He's practicing soothsaying, divination, magic, and in the practice of his divination, he realizes that I'm getting all these benefits out of this, but it's because of him. So I need to find a way to control him so that he becomes something that I can use and I can profit off of. Right? Good. What's another one? We talked about greed a little bit. What's the fourth one? Does anybody realize? What did Rachel take from his house? Idolatry. Right? So Laban has not got a great track record as far as the Torah is concerned, does he?
Self-induced stupidity.
Why did Rachel take them?
You know, that's a really good question. Any ideas?
It's inheritance.
Okay.
He wasn't going to give his daughters any of his inheritance.
Okay.
Being stingy, which you already stated, right? So maybe she was like, I'm going to take something for myself.
Okay.
Do you think it was something that would hurt him? Because why would she want idols when she prayed to God to open it? I mean, it seems very counter. Was it like, I'm going to hit you where it hurts him if you don't give me what is mine? Or do you think she valued them?
I don't know.
Or was she protecting?
Isn't it whoever has those has all of the the property and all that stuff?
Okay. Nick.
So I've heard lesson on there's the true bride and then there's the false bride.
Okay.
And I've seen like that correlation between the two wives of Jacob. So one represents the flesh, the other one represents the spirit. So maybe that falling in under Rachel could take us down a little rabbit hole that way.
I got some ideas that I want to tie into this. Anthony, what are you thinking?
I didn't see if it says idols, right? Was the idols made out of gold? So could it have money?
Okay. There you go. There you go. There's some thinking on that. Stay with me for a second. Let's go to the Haftarah. What are we seeing in the Haftarah? Idolatry. Okay. And some specific tribes are called out that are associated with the idolatry. You see where I'm going here. What tribes are associated with it? Ephraim. Does anybody know who Ephraim was? One of Joseph's sons. So we have Jacob, right? He has 12 sons. And through Rachel's line comes Joseph. And through Rachel's line comes Joseph and Benjamin. And out of Joseph comes Manasseh and Ephraim. Okay? Now, Manasseh, Ephraim, each one of these have meanings. Does anybody know what Ephraim means? I don't know if I could. I've heard that before, but I'm not 100% sold on that. It has this relationship. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I was going to cut you off.
So nobody knows Ephraim? Fruitfulness. Ephraim is proliferating, fruitful, abundant, right? Okay. And by the way, if you don't see the text of the names of the sons and their meanings, right? So Rachel's sitting there in the Torah portion, and she's married, but she knows she's not the one that he wanted. How do you think that's going to go down for your first couple years for marriage?
What do you mean, Leah?
Leah, I'm sorry. Yes, I meant Leah. Right, I meant Leah. Thank you for the correction. Right, so she knows that she's not the one. She said the text says that I am unloved, but the text actually means, it's better translated as I'm hated. She felt like he hated her. She was part of the deception, maybe willingly, maybe not willingly. Maybe her father forced her into it. We don't know. We don't know. But so she gets pregnant. God sees her, Ra'ah in the Hebrew. And it says that he sees her, so he opens up her womb. And she has a son. And what does she name her son? Reuven. Reuven. The son who, I have a son. He sees my son, right? Maybe if he sees my son, he'll love me because I've given him a son. So there is this relationship between him seeing her feeling hated, and her giving him a son and naming him Reuven, the Lord, the son of my sight, or the seeing of my son. Okay, good. So there's all these little traces, right? Issachar, wages, Dan. Deen in the Hebrew is vindicated as it's translated in the New American Standard. It means God is judged between the two of us. So she has a son, and what's she naming her son? She names him Dan, judgment. God, the Lord is my judge. So we see this is all throughout the Hebrew. Every son is named, and you'll see a hint of why he's named that based off the context of what's going on. This is very Hebraic, by the way. The Hebrews are a lot like the Native Americans, where they see things that are happening around them, and then they name their child something to convey that. Okay? Good. Jim.
You almost have to wonder if it was her way of saying, well, Dad, you thought so little of me as a daughter and a woman and traded me off like a piece of meat. So I'm going to get you where it hurts you most.
Okay. Money? Maybe. I mean, it's hard to read motives from the text, you know? I mean, we can put ourselves into a lot of different circumstances. Now, I've heard some really interesting commentary here, but I want to stay along with this thread of what's happening here. So, Rachel brings idols. Now, our Torah portion starts off with Jacob having this powerful revelation, and we'll talk about that later. That was one of the things I was going to bring up, right? Powerful revelation, right? Bethel, Sets up a stone there. Jacob's ladder. You guys are all seeing all that, right? Angels ascending and descending. Interesting that. Because Messiah makes reference to that in this week's Torah portion. Right? Except for now they're ascending and descending on who? On the Son of Man. Here's my question. Was Jacob cool with idolatry in his house?
No.
She's hiding all this stuff, and Jacob doesn't know about it at all. In fact, he's angry at Laban. He's like, find it. Find whatever is amongst my possessions that I took from you. Right? And Rachel's being deceptive.
You find that person.
Right? Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. There's a whole shadow picture there, isn't there? There's a huge shadow picture there.
Pastor, so remember the story in the Old Testament where the guy says, if you prevail me in battle, I'll offer the first person that comes out of the house and ends up being his daughter?
Yes.
And so it was like they were so detached from the ways of Elohim that they started doing these pagan practices. And I just keep thinking that maybe Rachel and the way that Laban in that household, they didn't even know the ways of Elohim, right? And so maybe she thought that was what was bringing all that prosperity to her, or that was the way that she honored Elohim.
The thing that you're referencing is Jephthah's daughter. I'm not one of the people that believes that Jephthah's daughter was burnt as a burnt offering. There are some people that believe that. I actually think that there's more in the text that's going on there. I believe that she was all offered up as a virgin to serve in the tabernacle in some way. But there is Rachel, at least at this point, isn't aware of how serious this. I mean, she is because she's deceiving him, but I want you to stay with me for a little bit, because what we have coming out of Rachel now is we have Joseph, we have Benjamin, and so Rachel's grandchildren are going to succumb to idolatry. The northern houses, right? Ephraim, Manasseh, all the northern houses, they end up, they end up finding themselves they end up in a place of idolatry. All right? Go ahead.
I was thinking about when she hid it, when her dad was going through the tent, she hid it and used her monthly impurity to hide it.
Okay. So we have something going on there. I mean, I'll tell you what, look, just to keep it real here for a second.
That's going to work, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Don't touch that. It has nida. It's associated with nida. Oh, okay, yeah, babe. I'm out. I'm done. Peace out, yo. If you need to do the laundry or whatever, I'm good, man. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things. Now, Jim brought up last week that we have natural cycles and there are things that happen to us in life, but that would have been very effective, right? If my daughters have something going on, I'm like, I'm dad, I'm down, I'll be outside if you guys need anything, anything I can help with, other than that whole topic. It's a good way to shoo away a man, isn't it? And she was very effective at doing that. Chris?
I have a theory on what Rachel was doing, and I agree with whoever it was that said it was idolatry, and the reason why is because, number one, this is what Rachel grew up with. This was the attitude in Laban's house that, yes, I mean, he had God speak to him in a dream. I don't know what that was about, but he was purely an idol worship.
He says, your God spoke to me in a dream.
Okay, but it was interesting that God even did that. Like, I don't know, there's a separate conversation there. But so Rachel grows up in an idolatrous household, right? So to her, it was normalized. Now, I've seen, and again, this is all speculation, this is just a theory, but I have seen people make concessions in marriage that they will not make as parents. So for instance, I've seen Jews marry Christians, and they're fine with having either two religions, or you just go to your church and I'll go to mine, and then suddenly they have kids and it's a fight. Because, well, who said we never agreed that we're going to raise our children Jewish? or we never agreed we're going to raise our children Christian. What just happened with Rachel? She just became a mother.
Wow.
So I think her attitude just changed, where she's like, well, no, I'm going to return to my roots. I'm an idol worshiper. And we see this with Hagar too, because the minute that Hagar went out from Abraham's household, what did she do? She took an Egyptian wife for her son. She returned instantly to her roots.
Okay. Good. Good connection.
Nice.
Julie.
All right, so if we go, I tried to write it down, but my translation's not that great. So if you go back and you look at those names, there's a meaning behind every one of them, and it gives a beautiful story of Messiah and his bride.
I've heard this.
It is absolutely beautiful. So when we look at this story of Messiah and his bride, and we look at what Rachel and idolatry and Laban, he knew who Yahweh was. He knew there was mixture going on. He knew who Yahweh was, but he had his gods. He was mixing. He was introducing the adulterers. So if we look at the two wives, we now have a picture of an adulterous bride who is mixing in Yahweh and idolatry.
So Rachel becomes kind of a type and shadow of a bride that is mixing with idolatry.
The whole story is just type and shadows.
Yes. Yes.
And when you look, it's too much to put in here, and I wish I had written it down the way it reads it, but do some digging on those names. It is beautiful.
Awesome.
It is just, and then everything starts clicking together. When you have that, you see the whole idolatry and the wickedness of the idolatry and mixing the two, and basically the adulterous bride. Then we have, and I hadn't read Hosea before, and then I'm reading that one going, yes, he's talking about the idolatrous bride right there.
Right.
And it all just meshes together with this beautiful.
Even the book of Hosea alone, God tells the prophet Hosea, and you guys have heard me talk about this before, but he tells the prophet Hosea, I want you to marry a woman of harlotry. And then when she goes and she betrays you, you're going to prophesy to the nation of Israel that this is what I feel like. I feel like my bride is gone into the ways of idolatry, of harlotry. She's sold herself to foreign lovers. So there's a lot here. It's good. Anything else standing out in the text that you guys want to discuss? Or, I'm gonna talk about something that Angela brought up here, which is kind of some of the practicals. How does Jacob not know? He wakes up the next morning, you deceived me. And it's like, well, we have this tendency to look at this and say, and be like, it's like, how is he so surprised? It's because we look at it with Western eyes, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think that not understanding the marriage ceremonies that existed back then, the veil, right? Not being able to see through the veil, huge.
Schnockered.
Right? Yeah, schnockered. Is that drunk? Is that what you're getting at? It says that Laban made a huge feast. Huge feast. Jacob probably did not remember his wedding night. Beer goggles, right? Right? Is that Rachel? Boy, she kind of looked like a Leah, but all right, we'll get some tonight. So, all right. I mean, that's kind of what was going on there, right?
Unless they had, not to get graphic, but unless there was some other custom, I know that I think it was probably, it's in a lot of cultures, so I'm assuming it was in Hebrew culture when you first had the first conjugal visit, so to speak. You would hand the white cloth stained with her blood, and you hand it out the door. People were waiting.
Yes.
For that. I don't know if they did that in the Hebrew.
Oh, yeah.
There's actually a Torah commandment that talks about how her father is able to use that to redeem her if he accuses her of being unfaithful.
So maybe it wasn't so much fun that first time as it was more of a thing.
Okay.
I don't know.
Mechanical that.
So here's the thing, and I really want to make sure that we're clear here. The text doesn't tell us how. Obviously, celebrating deep into the night, it would have been very dark. It had been tent. Okay, they had lamps, but again, I don't know the circumstances. What are you going to say, Dan?
It's revealing something deeper, right?
Okay. Well, so what are you seeing in that?
The circular nature of what Jacob went through.
Okay. Yes.
His life is coming back around. And
So you've lived your life by deception. Right? Guess what? You are now reaping. You sowed in deception. Now you're reaping in deception. You deceived your own father for the birthright. Well, guess what? Now you're going to be deceived by a father. And she's going to be the one that's going to bear your first fruit. Do you guys see that Hebraic kind of tying in that's going on there? Rachel?
It could also be that, Laban might have deceived Rachel by giving Leah, so then Rachel deceives him by taking there's a whole...
Yeah. So and this is why, I think this is what Yeshua is pointing at when he says, behold, an Israelite in whom there is no guile. An Israelite indeed, meaning that there was something that was happening in the Hebraic mindset of Yeshua's culture where he was trying to get their attention on the fact that they had been living by deceiving and conniving with each other for so long that that's not the way of somebody who is truly an Israelite. Somebody who is truly crossed over, somebody who is truly in Hebrew, we could use the word Jew here, but a Jew is only one tribe. So an Israelite, somebody who is a member of the covenant with Yahweh, they don't live by guile. They don't live by deceit. They don't live by mincing words. Does that make sense?
Laban also says, he's like, we don't do that here. We don't skip over the firstborn.
Right.
We don't marry the secondborn first.
Okay.
The firstborn. Almost like he's throwing it back in his face, what he did. What he experienced.
Oh, yeah.
And he could have just chose to take his wife Leah and go. He could have not chose to enter into marrying both of them.
Yeah.
He could have made a different choice.
And Leah, we see, so Reuben comes from Leah. Who else comes from Leah? Judah comes from Leah. The unloved. Judah comes out of the unloved, and we know who comes from that. Messiah comes from Leah. Yes. Messiah comes forth from the unloved. Isn't that interesting? Rachel?
I have another question. I just don't know what mandrakes are.
It's an aphrodisiac.
Oh,
we poured some.
No, we did not.
They were selling.
I did look it up, though.
for that.
You can't find it anywhere.
It's the blue pill for back then. Okay. Does that help you? Does that help you? Rachel, you're turning a little bright over there. You doing okay? You're matching the tablecloth here, Rachel.
But also fruitfulness, like it helped fertility, not fruitfulness.
Is that why she was so
they
interested in
believed that if they ate it would make...
It's actually a flower. Mandrakes are a flower, and there's a relationship with how they look to being associated with fertility. So the belief is that because it looks like something that you might expect fertility to come from, then if you consume it, then it will make you more fertile. And I don't know whether it works or not because I've never tried it. But my point is, a lot going on here. Okay, somebody else had their hand up. Who else had their hand up? Changing the subject here.
Girls call that.
Yes, Randy.
It was said of whom that there's an Israelite who
That's in Messiah. He talks about that in the book of John. And Nathaniel, yes. Yes. And there's a whole, but what did Nathaniel say that got Yeshua to respond that way? Let's go back to that. Go to John chapter 1.
Rabbi.
I want you to see this with very, very wonderfully clear eyes.
are truly the Son of God.
Ah! Let's read John chapter 1, beginning of verse 41. And he found first his own brother Simon and said to him, we have found the Messiah, which translated means the Christ. He brought him to Yeshua, and Yeshua looked at him and said, you are Simon, the son of John. You shall be called Cephas, which translated as Peter. The next day he proposed to go forth into Galilee, and he found Philip and Yeshua and said, follow me. Now Philip was from Bethsaida, of the city of Andrew and Peter. Bethsaida, fish town is what that means. And I've been there. It's interesting. Philip found Nathanael and asked him, we have found him of whom Moses in the Torah and also the prophets wrote, Yeshua of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Nathanael said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Philip said to him, come and see. And Yeshua saw Nathanael and said to him, behold, an Israelite indeed, whom is no guile. You can't deceive him. Right? He's asking the question, Nazareth? What? Messiah's coming out of Nazareth? And by the way, if you don't know kind of like the culture, Nazareth was like... All right, how many of you guys have been in Phoenix for a while? Okay. So if you live in Apache Junction right now, I don't want to step on your toes, but I'm about to. Okay? So you go to Scottsdale, and what do you expect? What do you see driving around? Mercedes-Benz, you see BMWs, you see Porsches, right? And you go to Scottsdale, Snobsdale. You might have and if you're here from Scottsdale, please, I don't take it personal, okay? But Scottsdale has a reputation of being high-end, right?
Yeah. Not since the millennials have taken over.
Not since the millennials have taken
Not since with bills.
Scottsdale.
All right,
Yes.
all right. Yeah. So now, Apache Junction, if you go there, you see lots of Mercedes-Benz and BMWs and... No, you're like... Trailers, right? So, Apache Junction has got kind of like a backwoodsy kind of, cowboy, redneck kind of mindset, okay? And it's not a bad thing. It's just kind of, but, my old boss, because I lived in Apache Junction for a very long time, so I can speak this way. My old boss used to make fun. He'd say things like, he's like, Kane, you must be mayor now of Apache Junction. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? What are you saying? He's like, you got all your teeth. And I'm like, shit, that's rough. All right? So Nazareth would have been like Apache Junction. It would have been like, oh, the Messiah's coming out of AJ, huh? It would have been one of those things like, why would God want to send somebody through there, right? This is Nathanael being honest and being truthful about, he's like, okay, we're going to go see the Messiah. And Yeshua, first of all, he understands his character because why? He's the creator. He recognizes who this person is. He knows what's coming. He sees the cynical nature of him. And so then he's calling his attention to that cynical nature. He's calling his attention to that. He's like, oh, you're going to be honest, huh? And then he prophesies to him, and it blows Nathanael's mind because he's not used to this being the real deal. So you see how this whole, he's kind of like, all right, let's be real. Let's be honest. I love it. He goes on. Nathanael said to him, how do you know me? Yeshua answered and said, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Now, some people have tried to say under fig tree is a idiom, and it may be. Fig tree is oftentimes a reference to Israel. But he says, Rabbi, you're the Son of God, you're the King of Israel. Yeshua said, because I saw you under the fig tree, you believing me? He's like, you shall see greater things than these. He's calling him out. He's telling him point blank. He's like, you're going to see a lot more than just that. Now, verse 51 is directly tied to our Torah portion. Look what it says. And he said to him, truly I say to you, you shall see the heavens open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. Angels ascending and descending. Do we see that in this week's Torah portion? All right. Jacob's ladder. Now think about that for a second. What we're realizing here is there is this there is this Hebrew charged concept that is happening in the Torah portion that is being revealed now, and Yeshua is pointing him back to this thing. Because if he was familiar with the Torah, he would have known what this was talking about. Maybe even this idea of sitting under the fig tree, maybe he was studying the Torah, we don't know. Maybe he had been studying the Torah. Maybe this is this week's Torah portion. And he's referencing it this week being when they're meeting for the first time. I don't know. But the fact that he calls him back to this idea of the angels ascending and descending, I want to look at that point of our passage a little bit more. Genesis 28. So Jacob is leaving Beersheba, where Isaac has redug his father's wells. He heads towards Haran, and he ends up in this place. This place is pretty significant in historical places. He ends up getting sleepy, spends the night there. Sun's gone down. Takes one of the stones of the place and puts it under his head and lays down in that place. Then he has a dream. Ladder set on the earth. Now this word ladder, it's tough for me to envision this. It is somehow associated with, well, and I'll tell you, the occult really gets into this Jacob's ladder thing. They're real, like they go down a lot of rabbit holes. They're trying to open up portals, and the belief is that there is something associated with this place known as Jacob's ladder in our text. There's some reason that this is a place where the veil that exists between the spirit realm and the physical realm, there is access to and from. Does that make sense? Ladder set on the earth. There's a whole lot just on the earth, because remember, man is pulled up from earth. Right? Adam, Adamah, you guys remember that? With the top reaching up to heaven, and behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Now, what we can envision here, unfortunately, I don't think really does a good job of articulating quite what the text says underneath the surface. When we say ladder, we're thinking, and I can climb up, and now angels are descending and ascending, and somehow he's way up there and we're way down here. And I'm not sure that ladder does a real good job of articulating this. Somehow there is a breach in the dimensions, and they're coming through, and they're going out through this ladder. And I don't like that terminology. I can't find a better word than that. But
what's the Hebrew word?
Well, so think about this for a second, right? This idea of ascending and descending. We've talked a little bit about this, right? So the earth, heaven, earth, man, heaven, God. We have to find a way to bridge this, because he's up there and I'm down here, right? So we need somebody who could simultaneously be on the earth, but at the same time in the sky. Does this make sense? Jacob's ladder. Now, where you see the culmination of this fulfillment is when you have a man of flesh and blood with the Spirit of God hanging upon a tree, suspended in between the heavens and the earth. Okay? Jacob's ladder. So he is the one. Doesn't he talk about himself as being the door? No man gets to the Father except for by me. This is Jacob's ladder. Jacob's ladder is a reference to the one through whom people, humanity, mankind, fallen, sinful flesh can enter into the presence of God. Mankind can get into a place of the heavens. Jacob's ladder is a foretelling of the Messiah. And if you don't understand that, because look what we see later on in the text. He goes, it carries on. I am Yahweh, the God of your father Abraham, the God of Isaac, the land which you lie, I will give it to you and your descendants. So we still have this covenantal aspect of the land. Verse 14, your descendants shall also be like the dust of the earth. So there's this blessing. They're going to spread all four corners of the earth. We see that in the northern and southern kingdoms. We see that in the dispersia and in the diaspora. Verse 15, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. So they have this emphasis about I am the one that sustains you. I'm going to provide for you. And I have made promises not only to you, but also to your forefather. And I will do what I said I will do. So this ladder, all of a sudden, he's getting a view and he's seeing God. And God is talking to him. Now, verse 16, Jacob awoke from sleep. Surely the Lord is in this place. I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place. This is none other than the house of God. Bet-El, house of God. And this is the gate of heaven. I think it's interesting that it references a gate there. But look what it says in verse 18 and 19. This is the part that I think is so profound. So Jacob arose early in the morning and took the stone which he had put under his head and set it up as a pillar, and he poured oil on its top, the anointing. Was that one of my kids? That sounded like Justice. Okay. If that was my son, he needs a good beating. And he called the name of that place Bethel, house of God. However, previously the name of the city had been Luz. Now, what's really profound here about this is that he pours this oil on the stone. Now, I don't have time to get into the stone, but this stone has a lot of significance to it. There's all kinds of references to the stone. The stone is one of the big things that's sought after in the occultic, because many occultists, they want to find a way to control the access between the spiritual dimensions and here, heaven and hell. It's interesting how much Hebrew is in the occult. So he pours oil upon this stone, and the stone is the representation of the experience that he's having here. Now, later on, we're going to see that Messiah is referenced as what? A cornerstone. The chief cornerstone. The word Messiah means to be anointed, to be covered with oil, right? So there's something about this stone that is trying to get us our eyes on these things. There's more here. I could get into verse 22. And the stone which I have set up today as a pillar will be God's house. So later we're going to see that Bethel is going to become significant in terms of the building place. And of all that thou dost give me, I will surely give a tenth to thee. Now that's very interesting because this is the second time a tithe has been mentioned apart from the Levitical priesthood. The first time was Melchizedek. Abraham gives a tenth of his tithe to Melchizedek. And now we see Jacob saying, I'm going to give a tenth of everything I have to God. Now what that's going to look like, we haven't quite, Jacob hasn't kind of figured out, but he's saying, hey, you're my God. Okay, I'm receiving you as my God, and this is a holy place. And I'm going to set up this stone, and I'm going to pour oil on it. I'm going to consecrate it unto you. And I'm going to make sure that in this place, I'll give my tithe, the tenth of these things. What was the tithe back then? The first part of all of our offspring, our herds, our cattle. So this stone now becomes an altar where the animals are offered. Because later on, we're going to see a stone or a holy place where offerings are going to be offered up is going to happen. But that's going to be at the Mishkan. And then from there, it's going to become the temple proper.
Is it the same place that Isaac was offered up?
I'm not certain about that. I think maybe it is, but I have not been able to connect some dots on that. I've got questions about it. Maybe. Mount Moriah is what you're referencing over there.
Archaeology in Jerusalem and Israel is proving that it is.
Oh yeah,
Recently.
We went a couple months ago. We went to the Pool of Siloam, which they just unearthed so much.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. But you said the tithe back then wasn't the tithe always?
Always to God?
Yeah.
Yes.
Always to God, always animals. the tenth of the produce, right? The tenth of the animals, the tenth of the produce.
Yes. When we're talking about that, I mean, the Torah does give provision for people who cannot bring animals.
Right. They bring them money, then they buy the animals where they are.
Either that, or sometimes they would actually just give their money directly. Yeah. And you see examples of this in Yeshua's situation and with the woman that's coming and bringing the coins.
But archaeologists have found the altar that Abraham was to put Isaac on. And that's the most recent archaeological discovery, because I keep up with that.
Wow. Interesting.
And as we progress in time, more and more of little things in this book are being uncovered. It's not his death on the cross. It's the little things that lead up to it that were foretold.
I think that is going to be one of the major things that is going to help Judah, the scales to come off Judah's eyes. What's unfortunate is as the scales are coming off Judah's eyes and they're beginning to receive Messiah, what I see, unfortunately, is it seems like there's a lot of scales going over believers' eyes where they're rejecting the Torah. And it's interesting how that works, how that paradigm shift. Many believers in increasing numbers are becoming blind and hostile towards the Torah.
But God's ways are not man's ways.
Amen. Amen.
And if that's how he chooses to get his people to accept and believe in him.
Yes.
We already have salvation. If you truly have it, you won't fall away.
Well, I want to look at something that actually the text talks about here today. And I want to kind of close with that unless anybody has any other questions, because I think we're almost out of time. Yeah, we're right on time. Look what he says here in this final verse here in 28, verse 21. Look at verse 21st. Then Jacob made a vow, an oath, saying, if God will be with me and will keep me on the journey that I take and will give me food to eat and garments to wear, and I return to my father's house in safety, then Yahweh will be my God. There was this relationship between the returning, teshuvah, repentance, coming back to him, right? He's saying, he's going to bring me home. And that, I think, is a prophecy, because I know that there are a lot of Jewish people that they are completely closed off to the idea of Messiah. They're completely closed off to the idea that he, in some ways, it's how we've presented him. We've presented him as a Torahless Messiah. We've presented him as, as somebody that did not come to do his Father's will. We may say it one way, but then we deny it by all this stuff that we pollute our congregations with. This idea of Jacob's returning to the house of Abraham is really, I think, quite profound, because in Jacob you have all 12 tribes, not just one, not just Judah. In Jacob you have all of the tribes. In his offspring you have all of the tribes of Israel, and they're supposed to return to Abraham. And there's another layer of looking at this, that we believe that he is going to return his people to his father's house again. And that's kind of what Messiah is talking about when he starts talking about the bosom of Abraham, coming back to the father's house, coming back to the place where as a boy, your father's arms were wrapped around you and you knew, this is my dad, this is my home, this is my house, this is the place where I belong. I'm longing for that, and I'm hoping for that. What were you saying?
Safe haven.
Safe haven. Yes. Returning to Abraham's house.
But if they never truly knew and accepted him, how are they going to return? You can't return to something you've not been to before. And when you look at orthodoxy, they're stuck.
Well, I don't mean it as individuals. I'm talking about a collectiveness. Because Israel once knew Yahweh.
Yes.
Israel made an oath with Yahweh. Israel, all Naaseh B'nishmeh, all he says we will do, right? Israel took upon herself the yoke of the commandments. So she knew him as a husband. She knew him as a lover. She knew him. I mean, this whole topic is about the adulterous people, right? Ephraim, your idols are going to cast these things down, right? I mean, and Hosea's text is graphic, talking about, women having their bellies ripped open and their children removed in front of them. And I mean, we're talking the worst kind of warfare. And yet he's still at the same time telling them that you can put your idolatries away. And make no mistake, Judaism has its idolatries. Christianity has its idolatries. There's no question. And I probably get kicked out of this church for saying this, but it's absolutely the truth. Both groups have their idolatries. We don't tend to put together, I mean, heck, the Apostle Paul talks about greed as being a form of idolatry. Tell me there's not greed in the church. Tell me there's not greed amongst the greater body of Judaism. Tell me there is not this lust for all things financial. That's a human condition, and that's what Yeshua actually condemns in Mark chapter 7. That is the ultimate unclean, is when you have so much but you want more.
Yeah. God means get our dollars.
Right. So this idea of returning, I think, is a matter of coming back to a pure love of God and a pure love of his ways, and that includes the Torah. Does that make sense, PJ? Returning to him, kind of as a collective, not necessarily as an individual. Yeah. Don't make me wrong. Don't mistake me. You must do it as an individual. But I think that we're going to start to see them coming. I believe that we're going to see a last days revival before the great judgment is going to happen.
It's happening among the Israeli soldiers.
I've heard this. A lot of them are wanting. They're asking questions. Why am I about to? A lot of the Israeli soldiers are very young, and they're coming face to face with death. They're having to go down these tunnels. They're getting blown up by IEDs. They're having to try to figure out, okay, is it worth it to lose 100 men to go rescue 5 hostages? Is this worth it? They're having to wrestle with these real serious life or death questions. And those life or death questions are going to reveal the searching for the one who redeems the soul. I hope. Because I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you something that made me very angry. There's a lot of rabbis that are telling people that if they wear tzitzit, that the tzitzits are going to act as protection for them. And that by wearing the tzitzit, it's going to be like a talisman. Bullets won't hurt you. Well, that does real great to foster courage for about 10 seconds. But then when the bullets actually start hitting you, you're like, hey, Rabbi, come on. I lost how many guys that were all wearing these? Where were you? This isn't working. So we got to get back to a place where we're able to give them something substantive.
So why is it now that Jews in the United States are being persecuted for wearing?
Yes.
Put the Star of David away. Don't wear your It's a sign of the times that people who don't know the Lord's word are confused, they're anxious, they don't realize that if you know him and search for him, you don't have to worry about those things on this earth. We're on the earth, but not up. We're of the earth, but not on the earth. And it's a time for the body of Christ to be stronger than ever and be witnessing, because this may be our last chance before he returns.
So the stone is a pillar, and that pillar is an eternal monument. And that pillar, that stone, that is something that points directly to the Messiah of Israel. Amen. That stone itself was the one that had the oil poured all over. That stone is the one that was rejected by... There you go. That stone is the one that has been rejected over and over and over again. And I challenge any rabbi that's online to come and sit, and I'll have a conversation with them if they disagree with me. But the phone number, if you want to get a hold of us, is 480-628-3462. I'm telling that for the people online. I'll debate some folks on the rabbi. All right. I love you guys. Let's close in prayer. Jim, will you bless us out with prayer?
Master, thank you for this day, this time together, for this moment in your word. We ask that going forward, you bless each of us. We ask that your will be done in all things. For this we ask in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.
Amen. All right, guys, we're going to spend some time cleaning up. Please clean up, clean up. No gabbing. No gabbing.
For being persecuted, the worst they're going to do is get me a spot in line early to meet my office. That's the best they can do. Bring it on.
Yeah, we shouldn't office. All right.
Yeah, we're gonna see that.